What is up, guys? We are back. It's your boy Effie with Any Action Sportscast here to go over UFC 310, Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. We're coming off another winning week, making it 3 straight winning weeks for our bets on the channel. So we're going to be trying to make it 4 straight weeks on this pay-per-view. It's going to be a very good pay-per-view, the last pay-per-view of the year, and it's a good one, man. I think the UFC is giving the fans a lot of good fights on this card. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Ian Gary in that co-main event, and that's going to be an absolute banger, guys. Do not miss the Landwehr Choi fight. Honestly, a contender for fight of the year on that main card. So super excited. A lot of good prelim fights as well. And yeah, man, I want to keep this hot streak going. I want to keep the good picks coming in. So without any further ado, let's get right into the fights. In the very first fight of the night, we have a heavyweight fight between Nzechukwu and Brzeski. Kennedy comes in as a massive minus 600 favorite, while the comeback on Łukasz comes in at plus 400. Now, let's start with Kennedy, man. So he's a huge, tall, giant, heavyweight striker here with deadly hands, dangerous guy on the feet. But man, just 2 fights ago, not his most recent one because he won his most recent one against Chris Barnett, but 2 fights ago he comes in as a huge favorite over OSP, and he drops that fight, man. Before that, got knocked out in about a minute against Dustin Jacoby. And he's definitely let people down, man. He's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, and 2 times he lost. He came in as a big favorite, especially against OSP, man. He was a huge favorite in that fight. And he comes in as a huge favorite again at minus 600. And, man, I got to say, guys, at plus 400, there's definitely better people you could bet on at plus 400. To me, Brzeski is not going to be in the UFC much longer. I think he's going to get slept in this fight. He is 1-4 in the UFC, and, man, he's just not good. He's just out there, and he's a victim of USADA, where the steroid, commission comes in and tests you. Obviously fighting overseas before he comes in the UFC, this guy looks absolutely shredded and ripped. Comes into the UFC testing protocols, and now that physique is just gone, man. He's going out there getting worked pretty much in every single one of his fights. And the only win he has in the UFC so far is against Walter Walker, who also won't be in the UFC in about a year or 2. So, in my opinion, Łukasz isn't the highest level fighter at plus 400. I mean, that's just, you're taking a flyer. You're hoping for a knockout. You're hoping this probably goes to the decision where Łukasz can piece up Kennedy and staying safe and not getting knocked out. But Kennedy's a super long-rangey guy that's hard to deal with, man. He splits opponents' guards. It's just that bad feeling, you have watching that OSP fight. And that wasn't that long ago. It was only 2 fights ago. And, he comes back against Chris Barnett, who, let's be honest, that was an easy win there. And Chris Barnett's not the best heavyweight either. So, I don't know, man. Definitely a pass on this fight. If I was going to bet this fight, I would bet not to go the distance. We have the old gloves again back in the UFC, so knockouts are back. And Kennedy hits with a lot of power, man. Like I said, super tall, long guy, but Łukasz isn't, small in his own right. He's 6'4" as well. So give me Kennedy knockout round 1 or 2. Up next, we have a banger of a fight. We have a lightweight fight between Guida and Chase Hooper. Guida comes in at plus 650, while Chase Hooper comes in at minus 1150. Absolutely crazy. And it's justified, honestly, guys. We have Guida coming in, 42 years old. He's going to be 43 the day after the fight. Absolutely insane. He's still fighting, while Chase Hooper comes in 25 years old, obviously. Kind of like the former prospect that's, kind of grown up in the UFC, which you always like to see. And I got to be honest, man, I put some respect on Chase Hooper's name, man. He came out and absolutely worked a dangerous striker, Slava, in his last fight. And, man, Chase is looking good. He's looking improved at 155. He came into the UFC, obviously super young and skinny and not built yet, not even a grown man, coming in. I think he was like 18 years old or 19. And, he's fighting at 145. Now he's at 155, and he's filled out way more. And his striking's coming along, man. It's not the best. He still has that weird upright stance like iCarly. And his striking defense isn't the best for sure. He's not the quickest on the feet. But, he's definitely developing. And it's good to see him improve. And I think that was a really big statement, the way he handled Slava in his last fight. So, and I'll be honest, guys, on the other side of Guida, man, he shouldn't be fighting. He shouldn't be fighting at 43 years old. I have no idea why he's fighting. Probably just to make weight and get paid for making weight, which he probably will do. But at this point in his career, man, I just don't see how he's going to give Chase Hooper a fight. Is he going to take him down and try to out-wrestle Chase Hooper? I doubt it, because they've had a grappling match already outside of the UFC, and Chase Hooper already leg-locked Guida. I think he hit him with a knee bar, or a calf slicer, I think it was. And yeah, so Chase Hooper, deadly jiu-jitsu in his own right. Off his back, he's legit, man. He can go for sweeps. He can reverse you and line up on top. He can take your back. He can hunt submissions, man. He's dangerous off his back. So, getting taken down by Guida wouldn't be the worst thing. Getting pinned and held down and losing minutes that way for sure. But, I mean, Chase Hooper is not dumb. Another kid, super young with high fight IQ. So, And then so that leaves me to think that Clay Guida wants to strike with Chase Super, and maybe he can push the pace, be the one going forward the whole fight, just throwing crazy volume. But that's really the only way I see him winning, man. I think that Clay needs to win a decision here because I don't see him finishing Chase Super at this point, and I think that Chase Super has all the finishing upside. So I think that Chase Super goes out there and finds a finish at some point on the mat. I actually don't expect Chase Super to be the one shooting takedowns in this fight. I think he'll be pretty safe, honestly, on the feet, and then try to see how Clay approaches this fight. I think Chase can pretty much be safe anywhere in this fight. That's why he's a huge favorite. Definitely not putting that on parlays or anything. Yeah, man, I think this actually goes a little bit later than a lot of people think. I'm thinking around 2 or 3 Chase Super submission. Next, we have a welterweight fight between Michael Chiesa and Max Griffin. Chiesa comes in even money as a slight underdog, while Max Griffin comes in as a slight favorite at -120. And yeah, man, I can see why this line is so close, man. Kind of obvious here. I'm going with Max Griffin. I think he's going to win this fight. I think he's going to win a decision in this fight. But the obvious threat here is the grappling from Chiesa, right? You don't want to get your back taken by Chiesa, and you don't want to get submitted or out-wrestled by Chiesa. I don't think that Chiesa can strike with Max Griffin. I think that on the feet, Max Griffin is a way quicker, slicker boxer and striker in general than Chiesa. Better leg kicks, better strikes, better combinations, better footwork, really, and better defense. Well, Chiesa, to me, does seem a little bit slow. He's getting up there in age, but so is Griffin. I'll give him that. Two really old guys here. Chiesa's actually younger, 36, and Max Griffin's 39. But Max Griffin, to me, in this fight, just can't get his back taken. And I think that Chiesa will be shooting takedowns in the open mat and against the cage. I think that Chiesa will shoot takedowns and get stuffed by Max and end up on the cage in the clinch. And from there, he's going to be trying to sweep his leg. I think he's going to go for the inside trip a lot in this fight. I'm really expecting a lot of clinch work from Chiesa in this fight to lead to the takedowns. But I don't think that it's going to happen, man. Maybe one round. But I don't see him taking 2 rounds off Max. He's really going to need to work that wrestling, and I don't think he can, be safe for 3 rounds against Max Griffin on the feet. I know Max Griffin's not this crazy guy with, crazy knockout power or anything, but I do think that Chiesa is slowing down and getting a little bit flat-footed at this point in his career. So I think that Max Griffin can win a decision. Give me Max Griffin. I think he's going to win that fight. And I don't mind that -120, man. I think I might get to a bet on that one. Ooh, up next we have a really good fight in the flyweight division. We have Cody Durden taking on Joshua Van. Cody Durden comes in at +130, and Joshua Van comes in at -155. A little bit surprised at that line. I figured it'd be a little bit closer, and if anything, I wouldn't have been shocked to see Cody Durden here, the underdog, to be the favorite. So to see him at +130 is a little bit surprising to me, but let's get into the tail of the tape. So in this fight, we have a guy in Cody Durden who has way more experience than Joshua Van. Joshua Van fought on UFC Noche at the Sphere most recently, and in that fight, he drops the first round. He ends up getting outstruck in that first round, but comes on late and showed he has really good heart and really good chin. And I mean, this guy is durable as could be, man. But that's one thing that I don't like about Joshua. First, a good of a striker he is, and for how clean and crisp and how fast he looks. And he's hittable, man. He's getting hurt in a lot of his fights. He's getting taken down and getting out grappled in a lot of his fights. And I think that Cody Durden here would be dumb not to try to wrestle Joshua Van. I think that Cody Durden here really made a name in the UFC early, spamming takedowns, shooting takedowns, almost like he was rushing himself. So, kind of have gone away from that most recently. But one thing I really like about Cody Durden is his activity, man. This guy is super active and he wants to get paid. This dude has, in the last year and a half, I think he has 5 fights since that Charles Johnson fight. And he's been on a good run, man. I know he's lost 2 of those fights, got finished by Bruno Silva. We were on Silva that night, but he took a short notice fight against Matt Schnell in his most recent fight. Got the submission there in the second round. So if you just shoot in a sloppy takedown, Cody Durden's going to snatch up your neck. But I would like to see Cody Durden push the pace of grappling a little bit more. I would like him shoot on Joshua a little bit more. But I do worry that if Joshua, sprawls early, he can catch Cody, man. Joshua's quick. He's young. He's obviously himself growing in the UFC right in front of our eyes. But to see -155, it's a little worrisome for sure because I can see a path for Cody Durden to win this fight. Stay safe on the feet and really use that grappling threat to open up the striking. So, man, this is a tough pick. I really want to pick Cody Durden, but I really think that Joshua can hurt him bad. I'm going with Joshua Van decision here, but this is probably my most, I guess you could say, least confident pick so far throughout the card. So give me Joshua Van decision, but it's going to be sweaty for sure. And up next, we have a catchweight fight between Chris Weidman and Eryk Anders. The reason this is a catchweight was because these guys were booked a few weeks ago, and then on fight day, Eryk Anders pulled out right before the card starts, which really sucked because Chris Weidman would have been on a pay-per-view, that John Jones card in front of his hometown crowd. He's a New York guy, would have fought in front of all his family and stuff. So, that sucks to see. But here we have a catchweight, so obviously they don't have to cut weight again, just 2 weeks ago. And I think it was because Eryk Anders got food poisoning, which was the reason why he was, pulled out. But either way, a fight that, we broke down earlier. And I'm not changing my pick, man. I'm going with Eryk Anders to win this fight. Chris Weidman we all know the story with him, man. Legend, UFC champion, and everything. And he's getting a lot of hate, from everyone for his last fight where he eye poked a dude and just raked his eye like over and over and over again. But in his last 2 fights that he's come back since that brutal injury, he looked better than I thought he would. I'll be honest. I kind of expected him to fall off a little bit more, and he obviously has won both those fights, 2-0 since breaking his leg. So that's applaudable. Definitely give it up to Chris Weidman. Like that's an accomplishment and a win in its own right. But at this point, man, I struggle to see him outboxing Eryk Anders for 3 rounds in this fight, and I really struggle to see him taking down Anders. If he does take him down, I do think he does have the grappling advantage once they're on the mat, but I think that this fight will be a lot of cage pushing, man. Chris Weidman going for those takedowns and getting stuff where Eryk Anders is a better athlete, younger guy, stronger guy. At this point in their careers, Chris Weidman's worn down, had a ton of surgeries, ton of miles on his body. Where Eryk Anders, I'll be honest, guys, he's probably on his way out as well, but I think that he's a superior athlete. I think that he's, the quicker guy in this fight. So I think it goes all 3 rounds. If this fight ends up, being excited, I'll be surprised, put it that way. So I'm expecting a decision, here. I think it goes all 3 rounds, and I think that Chris Weidman retires after this fight. But the fact that they don't have to cut weight, and it was, booked just 2 weeks ago, does make it interesting. Give me Eryk Anders' decision. Up next, we have a welterweight fight between Randy Brown and Bryan Battle. Brown comes in as a plus 185 underdog, while Bryan Battle comes in as a minus 225. And this will be my first underdog pick of the video. I'm going with Randy Brown to win a decision in this fight. And yeah, man, nothing but respect to Bryan Battle. I even picked against him in his last fight, and he looked like $1,000,000, man. He looked like a beast in France over Kevin Gisette, and he just outstruck him and just made him look silly. That dude, looked amazing in his last fight. Bryan Battle, since the Ultimate Fighter, has really looked good in the UFC. And we obviously saw him get out-grappled by Renat, but that's not the type of fight that's going to happen here. This is going to be a striking fight, and if anything, I can see Bryan Battle being the one to mix in some takedowns here, or at least attempt it against Randy Brown. And I think it's up to Randy Brown to stuff those takedowns and get separation, or else he's going to be in the clinch the whole fight against Bryan Battle with his back against the cage. I think that Bryan Battle throws a ton of volume, which makes him dangerous, especially if the fight goes to the decision. But I'm actually going with Randy Brown here. I think that he can keep it 50-50 and have his own success in the striking realm. And at distance, man, I think that this is a big step up in competition for Bryan Battle. And while I do think he's looked good in the UFC, he's had a good run. Don't get me wrong. I think that minus 225 is a little bit wide, man. I think that I thought that he would come in as a favorite at around minus 150. So to see him at minus 225, I do think that's a bit wide. I'm going with Randy Brown here to win the decision. And one thing I like about Randy Brown, here, is that he's had 8 fights, go to the decision here in the UFC. And he's 7-1 in fights that go to decision in the UFC. So out of 8 fights, he's won 7 of those decisions. So I think that he could do enough here to win and take 2 rounds off Bryan Battle. So I think it goes all 3 rounds. I think that Bryan Battle will be throwing a ton of volume. Randy Brown's going to have to counter, effectively here and keep him off him, because I think that Bryan Battle's going to be one with a lot of forward pressure in this fight. Good movement, good footwork, good kicks. He's good, man. So it's going to be a great fight here. Super excited for this fight, but I'm going with the underdog here. I'm going with Randy Brown via decision. Oh my gosh. And up next is a fight that I have no idea why or how it's on the prelims. We have a featherweight fight between Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling. Evloev comes in as a minus 260 favorite, while Aljamain Sterling comes in as a plus 210 underdog. This will be Aljamain Sterling's second fight at featherweight, where he looked, really good in his debut against Calvin Kattar. And he, obviously looked like $1,000,000 in that fight and pretty much was safe everywhere in that fight. He outstruck him, outgrappled him, and he looked great. That was a dominant performance from Aljamain Sterling. It was really good to see him go up a weight class and still look good. Other side, we have a Russian beast, man. Movsar Evloev, this guy is really good, man. Very good grappling, obviously super good cardio. This guy, very good submission defense. This guy, if you put him in a submission, he just will never tap. You have to put him out. I do think that you have to either break his arm, his knee, his ankle, and break it in front of the ref, or you have to choke him out unconscious, because he will never tap, man. He's been in knee bars. He's been in some pretty deep guillotines. And this guy just fights and fights and fights and fights his way out of submissions, man. It's absolutely crazy to watch him fight. And on the feet, he's not the best fighter. I'll say that for sure. But he's not bad. He's not a one-dimensional, just pure grappling, type fighter only. He can strike, competently in his own right. Even against Arnold Allen, he was having success at times on the feet, where, man, I had him in that fight. He was a huge favorite in that fight, and I went big on him, and man, he had me sweating. So you always remember the times where you lay juice on a guy or a team, and they make it way closer than you would like it to be. So that's not a great feeling. But in this fight at minus 260 against Aljamain Sterling, I think that Evloev will win this fight. Do I think that line is right? Man, I think it's a little bit wide. I think that's a little bit of disrespect here to Aljamain Sterling, because think about it. Evloev, a very good grappler, right? A very good offensive wrestler with takedown upside here. Whereas Aljamain Sterling, if he does get taken down, he's been a college wrestler. He's been a wrestler his whole life, really. I want to see how he looks off his back. I want to see if he can, get him off him if he could scramble, if he could get to his feet. I do expect Aljamain to be able to get up if Evloev takes him down. I don't think that Aljamain is going to get pinned for extended minutes in this fight. I think that he's going to be able to get up and then throw volume on Evloev here. I expect Aljamain to make this fight really close. I think that Evloev has a tendency to be better than his opponents everywhere in MMA and then still make the fight look close. So give me Evloev decision here. But man, I gotta say, I'm really close to flipping my pick here to Aljamain Sterling here to win via decision, but I'm not. I'm gonna go with a favorite here to win this fight. I'm going with Evloev to win via decision, but I'm expecting a close fight and a good fight from Aljamain Sterling. Now it's time for the main card. Or is it? Yeah. Oh, wait, no, we're still on the prelims. We have a welterweight fight between Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. Luque comes in as a plus 135 underdog, while Themba Gorimbo comes in as a minus 160 favorite. And I really wanted to pick Luque as my second underdog pick of the card here at plus 135, but I just can't do it, man. He looked so bad in his last fight against Joaquin Buckley, where I don't want to say the Q word, but it looked like he quit out there, man. He just folded up, shelled up, and said, see you guys later. Like, it was absolutely crazy to see him defend on the mat and, just shell up the way he did. Whereas Themba Gorimbo, man, he's on the rise. The UFC is really pushing this guy. You obviously know about his, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's connection. He bought him a house when he first started in the UFC, and he's taking advantage, man. This guy is definitely training hard, improving for sure. What's really surprising to see from Themba Gorimbo is his takedown abilities, man. In his last fight, he took down Nico Price a ton of times. I believe it was 7 times. And really dominated that fight. And then in the fight before that against Ramiz Brahimaj, he took him down 5 times. So Themba Gorimbo has 12 takedowns in his last 2 fights alone. And man, that's impressive, man. You can't, deny the guy the fact that he can really, level change and time these takedowns really fast. The speed on his entries is really good, and he looks like a good physical athlete, man. This guy hits hard, long-ranging guy, super hard to deal with on the feet. But man, on the other side, you have Luque, who very good striker in his own right. Very good clean combinations, dangerous at all times, with a ton of experience, man. This guy has fought a ton of high-level fighters, 100% better level of competition here, the strength and schedule, you could say, for Vicente Luque over Themba Gorimbo. 100% the best fighter Gorimbo has ever fought will be Luque. And to see him, come in at minus 160, it is a little bit worrisome. I feel like you're really trusting the potential of Themba and really playing into the fade or the fadingness of Luque here. One thing that I haven't mentioned is, Luque at one point in his career had a really big, serious brain injury. He had a brain bleed in his head, and that's serious stuff, man. You can't be doing that. Like, you can't be having that. Like, that's really scary. Like, I don't even know if you should be fighting. And whenever you have a guy have serious head injuries, is that someone you want to be betting on? So even though he is plus 135, and even though that is tempting, and even though he does have more experience and has fought and beaten high level guys, I gotta go with Themba Gorimbo. I'm going with Themba Gorimbo to at some point finish this fight. I think he can ground and pound Luque out just like Buckley did, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Luque win this fight. I'll give him that, man. I'll give him his respect, but I'm going with Themba Gorimbo to continue this rise, and I wouldn't be shocked to see it go all 3 rounds as well, but I think that he has enough to win this fight. Luque is going to be having to defend these takedowns, so if he can keep it on the feet, it gives him his best chance, but I think that Themba Gorimbo does edge out a decision here. If he drops the ball as a minus 160 favorite, I wouldn't be shocked. He is not one of the favorites I want to be betting on this week. And now we have the last prelim of the card. We have a light heavyweight fight between Dominick Reyes and Anthony Smith. Dominick Reyes comes in at minus 360 favorite. A pretty big favorite here for Dominick Reyes, while Anthony Smith comes in at plus 270. A pretty big underdog here for Anthony Smith as well. So, yeah, man, I'm going with Dominick Reyes here. I know he got knocked out all those times in a row back in the day. He took a long break, came back, and got knocked out again. But since then, he's looked good, man. I know he's, had tough times, and that chin is worrisome, man. Everyone wants to make jokes and make memes about how Dominick Reyes, his chin is dust, his chin is gone. And is Anthony Smith really someone that's going to crack that chin? I don't think so. I think that Anthony Smith has a ton of miles on him, man. 36 years old, 58 professional MMA fights, man. That's absolutely crazy. He's going to be 2 years older than Dominick Reyes, who is getting up there in age in his own right, 34 years old on Dominick Reyes. But I think that Dominick Reyes does have a speed advantage in this fight. I do like how he's looked, since his bad run. I think that he is returning back to form. And I think that Anthony Smith is just too worn down, man. He is not someone I want to be backing here, even though he is a plus 270 underdog and there is value there. I'm going with Reyes here. I'm going with Reyes to knock out Anthony Smith at some point in this fight. And I'm expecting Anthony Smith to at least at some point try to level change here on Dominick Reyes. If he just stands that range here, I think he's going to get picked apart. So give me Dominick Reyes via knockout round 2. Now it's time for the pay-per-view and probably the most exciting fight of the card. And honestly, one of the most exciting fights of the entire year. We have a featherweight fight between Nate the Train Landwehr and Doohoo Choi, the Korean Superboy. Landwehr comes in as a minus 135 favorite, while Doohoo Choi comes in at plus 115. And I'm going with Doohoo Choi in this fight. I understand why Landwehr is a favorite. He's minus 135 favorite, and I get it, man. For as as skilled as both these guys are, it really comes down to who's going to get clipped first, who's going to land that big shot early here, or I should say first, because they're going to be swinging, man. These guys throw heavy leather. Both have knockout power. Both have very slick, and crisp and powerful striking. Both throw a ton of volume. Both have not so good striking defense. So it leads me to believe that this is going to be a banger. Both guys are going to be throwing crazy shots in this fight. But I will say, Landwehr, in my opinion, does have more ways to win. He can, and I don't think he will, but I think he can mix in a couple of takedowns here on Choi and try to get top control here in this fight. Like I said, I don't expect him to, but I wouldn't be shocked if Nate was the one to mix in some grappling. I'm more so of the mindset that he's going to be the one trying to grapple more so than Choi is. I think Choi will be comfortable at range, switching stances and throwing shots, and really hurting Nate Landwehr, who, in my opinion, is getting up there in age, 36 years old, and he takes a ton of damage in his fights. The way he fights, he's an exciting fighter, right? He's going out there and he's just brawling. And at some point, that's going to catch up to you, man. Choi, had that, I think it was a 2-year layoff in the middle of his career for his military service. Shout out to the troops. And since then, he's come back. He had that draw against Kyle Nelson. Then he came back and won his next fight where he looked good. And he has that clean left hook, man. That clean left hook, the following up the jab, it could really hurt people, man. So I think that he's fast enough to land something on Nate Landwehr. I think he's going to rock Nate Landwehr in this fight. I think he's going to knock out Nate Landwehr in this fight in that second round. So super excited for that fight. I wouldn't be shocked to see Nate Landwehr win, but I'm going with another underdog here. I'm going with Choi to win via knockout. And up next is a fight that's an absolute shame. For it to be on the pay-per-view. Here we have Bryce Mitchell in the featherweight division taking on Kron Gracie. Bryce Mitchell comes in as a minus 850 favorite, while Kron Gracie comes in at plus 500. I honestly expected Bryce Mitchell to be a bigger favorite than he is right now, and I know that's crazy because he's minus 850. But yeah, man, what are we doing? Kron Gracie, boot scooter, the worst type of fighter that could be. This guy is a disgrace to MMA fans out there. For people that pay money to watch fights, this is horrible. This guy will pull guard. He will lay on his back like Ryan Hall and boot scoot you. Now, don't get me wrong. Kron Gracie, obviously from the Gracie family, great jiu-jitsu, right? Crazy threat of a submission here off his back, which is where he wanted to be. And Bryce Mitchell is a very good wrestler. Obviously, more well-rounded fighter, MMA fighter, way better striker than Kron Gracie. With good wrestling here, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Bryce Mitchell be the one taking down Kron Gracie and trying to prove a point here and now grapple Kron Gracie. I think that he's going to have to be safe in his guard, man. I really think that Kron Gracie is going to be throwing up a ton of submissions at all times off his back, but the facts are the facts. He's 36 years old. He's 5-2. He shouldn't be fighting a ranked fighter on the pay-per-view, especially at a big one like this. And the UFC is feeding this guy to Bryce Mitchell. They're like, all right, here we go, Bryce Mitchell. We know you got knocked out, sent to a different realm against Josh Emmett here. He almost basically died in the cage. And so now they're like, all right, here we go. Here's an easy layup here. Go out there, take this guy down, pound him out. Don't get submitted here and either win a decision here or at some point, get a ground and pound finish over Kron Gracie. But for me, I'm going to go with a round. I want to go round 1 so bad, but I'm going to go round 2, Bryce Mitchell, ground and pound finish. And then Kron Gracie will get cut. Up next in the heavyweight division, we have a rematch. Banger of a fight here, super high-level fight between Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov. Gane comes in as a minus 370 favorite, while Volkov comes in as a plus 275 underdog. And this is my big, I guess you could say, like, out there pick. I'm going with Volkov in this fight. This is a rematch where they already fought. Ciryl Gane kind of would Volkov for all 5 rounds in their previous match. I guess round 1 you could say was close, but 2 judges gave all 5 rounds to Ciryl Gane in their previous fight. But this is a 3-round fight, and man, I'm going with Volkov because I think that he can land on Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane leaves his chin up in the air, especially when he is at the end of his combinations. He does a thing where he skips out of range with both his feet super close together. But it's crazy, man. Ciryl Gane's one of the best athletes we've seen in the UFC's heavyweight division. This guy is good. Super fast, super quick. Can go out of both stances, can pretty much throw any type of strike you want. He can throw punches, he can throw kicks. But that's one thing that I think will really hurt him in this fight, even though we obviously have seen it didn't hurt him that first time. Ciryl Gane throws a ton of kicks, man. This guy throws way more kicks than he does punches. And I don't know. I think that Volkov can at least catch him, man. It's tough. And one thing I will say is that Ciryl Gane looked horrible against John Jones 2 fights ago. And before that, he beat Tai Tuivasa. In that fight, he almost got knocked out. So in his last 3 fights, man, there's been moments where he hasn't looked that good in 2 of them. So I know he looked really good against Spivak and absolutely dominated that fight. Looked like $1 million. Came back, looked great after that terrible performance against John Jones. But man, Volkov's coming off beating Sergey Pavlovich, and he whipped him for all 5 rounds. That was absolutely crazy. And we have him here again at plus 275. So I think that at some point it's going to be, these 2 guys, throwing leather, exchanging. And I'm just hoping that Volkov is able to catch Ciryl Gane's chin, because if not, Ciryl Gane's probably going to put on a masterclass decision here and just piece apart Volkov at range, staying safe in the big octagon, and trying to win a decision. So I'm going with Volkov here. I don't know, man. I feel like if he does get Ciryl Gane down, Ciryl Gane is not going to look good. And I think that Volkov can reach Ciryl Gane's chin, especially with him pulling his head out the way he does. Give me Volkov, man. Give me Volkov via knockout. I think he's going to knock him out in that third round. I almost said second round, but I picked way too many second round knockouts. And up next, we have the co-main event. Super excited for this fight. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov coming in against Ian Machado Gary. Rakhmonov comes in with a perfect undefeated record, 18-0, and so does Ian Gary, 15-0 for Ian Gary. Shavkat comes in at minus 390, crazy, while Ian Gary comes in at plus 290. First thing I gotta say is that's absolutely insane to me. I expect this to be a good fight. I expect Ian Gary to make Shavkat work, to push Shavkat, to really make this interesting. Do I think that he's minus 400 against Ian Gary? No. But do I think that Shavkat's going to win this fight and submit Ian Gary? Yes. These guys are former training partners. The word on the street is that when they trained together, Shavkat was submitting this dude whenever he wanted. So I got to say, I've seen Ian Gary grapple now in the UFC a few times, and the big red flag is the Michael Venom Page fight where, man, he did not look good. He had moments where he could have submitted Michael Venom Page and finished the fight where he just couldn't get that rear naked choke. He had his back. He had the backpack. He was riding, Venom Page for a lot of minutes in that fight, and he made it close, man. So I think that there's a big time grappling, discrepancy in this fight. But at range, man, I think Ian Gary can keep it close. Shavkat loves his knees. He loves his knees in tight, and I think that Ian Gary can make him pay if he's that close. If he's in range, trying to work those knees a ton. I think that Ian Gary can make him pay, but one thing I do think that Rakhmonov is going to be able to do is he's going to be able to catch Ian Gary's stance. The way Ian Gary fights, he's in and out. He like flows. He's in and out. He's bouncing, right? I think Shavkat's going to be able to time that trip. I think he's going to be using a lot of judo in this fight. I think there's going to be a lot of cage push, clinch work in this fight. And from the clinch, I think that Rakhmonov can really take down Ian Gary. I think Ian Gary knows this. I think he's going to be avoiding the clinch like the plague, and I think that's not going to be enough, man. I think that Shavkat at some point will get Ian Gary down in that second or third round and submit Ian Gary. So give me Shavkat Rakhmonov, round 3 submission. Now it's time for the main event, guys. We have the UFC flyweight title on the line. We have Alexander Pantoja taking on Kai Asakura. Pantoja, the champion, comes in with a 28-5 record, and he is currently minus 260 on the money line. The challenger is making his UFC debut, Kai Asakura, coming in with a 21-4 record, and he's plus 210. Now, this is crazy, man. So if you don't follow the UFC or anything like that closely, if you're just like a casual guy watching in for some bets, you would know that Kai Asakura has never fought in the UFC. This guy's, debuting in the UFC for a title fight. You don't really see that often. And on one hand, I get it. It's like this guy's really good, super exciting from a different promotion. He's a champion over there, and he's dominating his fights over there. And on the other side, you have Pantoja, who's basically ran through the whole entire division. This guy's beaten all the top contenders. On some of them, he's beaten them more than once. This guy is legit. Well, I really don't understand why Alexander Pantoja isn't more respected by the average MMA fighter. If you're a diehard MMA fan, you probably know how good he is. But I feel like Pantoja should be a bigger name, especially for not just his personality, but for his skill set. Man, this guy is good. This guy has everything you want in a fighter that you want to see. He's exciting. He has heart. He has crazy will. He has a good chin. He's durable, and he makes his fights exciting. He gets into brawls. He's also technical, a very good grappler, and that's one thing I will say. Like people want to complain about grappling, like, oh, they're just securing rounds and they're just trying to win and blah blah blah, kind of like Marab. But Pantoja's scrambles and his grappling are super exciting, man. When this guy gets into grappling exchanges, they're super exciting. You never know when the fight's gonna end. I know he's kind of had some a run here of decisions here, but for the most part, he's finishing guys. Like he's going out there and he's trying to finish you. This guy is 0 to 100 the whole fight, and he's smart, man. This guy is very durable, like I said, and he's like a complete fighter. Like there's nothing you can ask more for a fighter than someone like Alexander Pantoja. Kai Asakura here, very dangerous striker. Very dangerous ground and pound striker, I have to say, because he's coming from an organization where you're allowed to knee down opponents. I guess you are now too in the UFC, but not the way that Kai Asakura was doing. Man, this guy is flip stomping people. He's soccer kicking people. This guy is violent. This dude is super, super violent. I love what I see. Very good speed on his strikes. One thing that's obvious when you watch his tape is he's never fought in the octagon. This guy's fighting in rings, like a boxing ring, and so it's going to be interesting to see how he develops there in the UFC. But I think a lot of the questions for him are more so outside. We obviously have never seen him fight in the UFC. We don't know how good his opponents are comparable to someone in the UFC, especially at a high level like the championship type fighters. And it's also the division. So he was a bantamweight. He's a weight class above, and this is at flyweight. So I don't want to say the quote unquote weight cut is interesting, but the fact that he's coming down in a weight class he hasn't fought in, I think it's 7 years. He hasn't fought at flyweight since 2017. So he's going to have to do that weight cut for the first time. I expect him to make it. If you follow the UFC, they're promoting this guy like crazy. And he's looking shredded, man. I don't know how much more he has to lose before this weight cut starts. So going to be interesting to see how he deals with that. But Obviously, the new rule set, the fact that he hasn't fought in this weight class in 7 years, that weight cut, the travel, he's not from here, first time fighting in the U.S. There's just a lot of question marks here for Kai Asakura. But as far as the skills, man, I expect him to be good, man. We have people like Merab Dvalishvili out of Syndicate MMA talking about how close and hard the rounds are against Kai, and I believe him. I mean, Merab's not the type of guy just to hype up anybody, so I expect this fight to be close. I expect Pantoja to be the one actually trying to grapple and get this guy down. And I think that he's going to have success, man. I just can't go against someone like Pantoja, at this point in the career. This guy's in his prime. He's been a champion for a while now. I shouldn't say he's in his prime. He's 34 years old. But, man, I just think that he's, you don't want to get punched. You don't want to get, be the guy that lets in someone from another organization come in and lose. You're kind of representing the entire UFC. I mean, I've seen videos where, the UFC fighters are picking who's going to win this fight. And they're all basically like, dude, there's no way we're going to pick the other guy. Like the guy not from the UFC. We're obviously going to pick the guy that we want to win from our company. So it's going to be a good look if he wins. It's going to be bad luck if he loses. So, man, I think there's a lot of pressure on Pantoja to win this fight. I think he's going to come through. So give me and still Alexander Pantoja to win via decision. I think it's going to be a good fight. So super excited for that main event. That co-main event is going to be a banger as well, guys. We've been on a good run, and we won on the last card as well. We had Peter Yan for we won 1 unit on that. So another winning week there, and our picks have been doing really good. So we appreciate all the viewers, all the commenters. Let me know who you have on this card, and super excited for the fight. See you guys next week. Peace.